Welcome to the Soar Above Success podcast, where you'll learn how to soar above your competition. And now, your host, Yuri Vilk.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Soar Above Success podcast. My name is Yuri Vilk, and I'm here with Dylan Counts, an expert hypnotist. For over 20 years, Dylan has been a student of hypnosis and the fascinating power of the mind, discovering how the subconscious works and how easy change can really be. For the last 5 years, Dylan has used this knowledge to enhance the lives of hundreds of people in a clinical setting, giving them new insights into their own minds. Banishing fears, supporting personal change, developing confidence, and finding new inspiration in the workplace. Please welcome Dylan Counts. Dylan, thank you so much for being here today. It's an absolute pleasure for having you on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me, Yuri. I always love doing these.
So, Dylan, I know you've got a very interesting background, and you've been doing a lot of hypnosis. Tell me, what got you interested in first learning about hypnosis, and what got you started on that?
Back when I was a kid, 13, 14 years old, a friend of mine was actually interested in it and started to show me what you could do with it. And we started experimenting back and forth, different inductions, what we could do with it, how we could change ourselves. And we just got more and more and more fascinated by it, by just what we could accomplish with it. And it just became a passion.
Excellent. And when you say you get things accomplished with hypnosis, what are some things that you can accomplish with hypnosis? What are some of those mindset shifts that can occur?
Well, some of the common ones that you hear about a lot are stopping smoking, weight loss, getting rid of fears, things like that. But you can actually use it on a daily basis to find better goals and to really find out what drives you, what are your true motivations, and why they motivate you. Then you can also use it to accomplish those goals, to find better ways to move yourself forward.
Sure.
To get rid of the obstacles, to get rid of the things that keep you from moving forward, and find ways to push yourself forward as well. It's basically like hacking your brain.
Interesting. So is this something that I could do and it has immediate effect, or is this like a long-term strategy approach where I really have to sit there and do this every single week or every single month? What's the frequency on this?
That actually depends on the change you want to make. If you want to make a quick change, say get rid of a fear, that can be instantaneous. That can happen in anywhere between a half an hour and 45 minutes. Just depends on the fear and what drove it. But for some of the visionaries that you hear about, Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, the ones that just really drive themselves and create new innovations every day, they actually hypnotize themselves on a daily basis. They visualize their goals and hypnotize themselves to find those goals. Now they don't call it hypnosis. They don't even know that they're hypnotizing themselves.
Sure.
But it does happen. It happens very regularly.
So you mean to tell me that I can hypnotize, if I get good enough at this and I start practicing, we'll call it hypnosis or meditation or however it is that Bill Gates or Warren Buffett, how they decide to call it, whatever it is that they call it. If I start practicing this on a regular basis, you mean to tell me I can actually get good at hypnotizing myself and believing in things that I may have not otherwise had no belief in?
Actually, do it to yourself every day. My favorite example is if you've ever been on a road trip. You're driving hundreds of miles cross country.
Yeah.
And flat stretch of road, and you realize all of a sudden you don't remember the last 10, 15 miles.
Yeah.
You've hypnotized yourself. Anytime you started binging on Netflix and you realize you've watched through 3 or 4 episodes, or even just most of one episode and you don't realize it, you've hypnotized yourself. But for beliefs, you hypnotize yourself for new beliefs every single day. Every time you try and find every time you come up with a new belief, you've actually hypnotized yourself into that belief. That's flat out hypnotism. There's when you create a belief system, it's a form of hypnotism.
This would have been a great skill to have if in college, or maybe I even did have it in college. So those moments where I don't remember my class at all, and I would sit there and just stare at the professor, and kind of time just evaporates, and I have no idea what happened. I come in, and when I come to, it's like, wait, I'm in a lecture. There's something that actually they're saying something important to me, maybe that's pertinent to an exam. I really never paid attention in school to begin with, which is exactly why I'm on the path that I'm on. And this is something that you're telling me this is something that happens all the time. We don't even realize it.
Absolutely. Every time you zone out, just let your mind wander, you're hypnotizing yourself. You're actually putting yourself into trance, as it were. Toddlers, little kids, actually, not a lot of your viewers may remember Saturday morning cartoons, but kids still do it. They start watching TV shows, show after show after show after show, and they're just mesmerized, staring at the screen. They're hypnotized. That's why it's really hard to get their attention. You have to shout their name 2 or 3 times to get their attention. It's because they're in a hypnotic state.
Now, is the difference between subconscious hypnosis and conscious hypnosis, the latter being rather being able to control that state of mind and being able to selectively induce it?
When the induction itself isn't really all that different, you're relaxing your body, you're relaxing your mind. But where you take it, that's the difference between conscious hypnosis and subconscious hypnosis. If you're just letting your mind wander, that's subconscious hypnosis. There's really no purpose to it. You really don't do much with it. You're just relaxing in that state of being.
Sure.
But when you're consciously hypnotizing yourself, when you're consciously doing something with it, and that's usually with a hypnotist or with a program, then you are setting specific goals or setting specific what's the word I'm looking for? Achievements. And it becomes a conscious thing. It's the difference between actively stubbing your toe and subconsciously stubbing your toe. There's different reactions.
From my perspective, I always understand hypnosis as the guy with the watch kind of dangling it in front of your eyes, and you're getting sleepy, and then I'm going to snap my fingers and you're going to, pull your pants down or something absolutely ludicrous that you would otherwise never do. Is that really how it is, or what's the process like?
What happens with hypnosis like that, like stage hypnosis? Everybody's seen the stage hypnosis making people do funny things. In fact, I just got back from doing one of those in Des Moines, Iowa, where the volunteers, and this is where this word is important, volunteer, and I'll come back to that in just a moment.
Sure.
The volunteers on stage seem like they're made to do goofy things that would normally be embarrassing, things that they wouldn't normally do. And what happens when they're in a state of hypnosis is their inhibitions or their suggestibility is brought up to a new level. They're more suggestible. The conscious logical brain is out of the way, and we're dealing directly with the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind likes to please. It's like a little kid. It likes to please. If you tell it to do something, it wants to do it because it wants to please you. And so the volunteers on stage will do the goofy things. They'll do the funny things that have been suggested to them because the hypnotist is directly dealing with their subconscious. Now, the reason I bring up volunteer is because a lot of people think, well, you're making them do things they don't want to do, especially when you get some of the more raunchy stage shows where the people on stage are saying things that they wouldn't normally say, or even having orgasms on the stage. It's really amazing. You would think that, well, why would they do that? The problem is or not the problem, but the main fact to understand is they are volunteers. They're up there and they know they're going to be doing something goofy. They know they're going to be given suggestions to let them do something they would normally do. And everybody who volunteers to come up on stage is a bit of a ham anyway. They like to entertain. And that's what makes them great stage volunteers. But if the hypnotist gives them a suggestion that they don't want to do, they won't do it.
I see.
I've seen people just walk right off stage, come straight out of a hypnotic state, and just walk off stage instead of doing whatever it was that the hypnotist was suggesting. So it is voluntary.
Okay.
That's just being the suggestions that the hypnotist gives them.
Now, I promise there will be maybe, I don't know, if you hypnotize me later, I sure hope this won't happen, Dylan, but I hope that there will be no orgasms on this show and no involuntary actions of any sort. We're completely under our own control of our mind, or so we think. Now, that's an interesting point. Do you have any funny stories or any interesting stories of onstage hypnosis or anything that you maybe offstage things that you've experienced that are kind of in line with that sort of quirkiness?
One of my favorite skits that I'll do with high school proms, grad parties, things like that, is it's a group skit. It involves everybody on the stage, and it involves Harry Potter.
Okay.
And everybody on stage, I'll give them the suggestion that they are now students at Hogwarts.
Okay.
And they've just come out of spells class, and I'll ask them to tell me one by one. I'll ask them to tell me their favorite spells, or what spell they just learned, or their favorite spell, and what the name of the spell is, and what it does. And the best part is they come up with their own names. They come up with their own what the spell does. Now, the most common ones I see are fire and ice and things like that. But the names that these kids come up with are just fantastic. You hear a lot of stand-up comedians say, "I can't write this." Same thing. These kids come up with the most fantastic names and the most I gotta say, some of the funniest spells I've ever heard of and what they do. In fact, I'm going to go back to this last show again. One kid, his spell, the name of it was something, and it made people disappear. And he took his wand out and waved it at his imaginary wand and waved it at the audience and said, "Look, I just made him disappear." And and I asked him if he could make it reverse. And the split-second horror on his face of, "Oh crap, can I do this?" And he looks down at his wand and he takes it and he turns it over and waves it again. And okay, he's back. It's virtually every stage skit is humorous. Some of the ones you get are having a puppy on their lap, and they're just loving on this cute little puppy, and all of a sudden you realize the puppy just pooped in your lap, and the look of ew, because it's real for them when the suggestions make or change their reality, and that's the underlying lesson of using hypnosis. You are changing your reality.
Yeah.
So if I give them the suggestion that they are floating on the surfboard out on the beach and here comes a shark, even though they know that they're not actually on the ocean, but they do know they're on the ocean. It is flat out real for them that a shark is coming after them, and they'll scoot their chairs across stage back and forth in patterns that just trying to get away from the shark no matter what.
So this is real.
Absolutely real for them.
Wow. These experiences, because I always see these as sort of stage acts. I'm sure everybody who sees hypnosis for the first time, they're like, come on, they're not really doing that. They don't really believe in that. But this isn't a matter of belief, right? This is a matter beyond that.
Yep, this is because you are rewriting your memories, you're rewriting your reality under hypnosis, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. In fact, one of my favorite examples for a subconscious change is someone who's got a daily commute of maybe, say, half an hour.
Yeah.
And it's taken you a few years or even a few months to figure out your favorite commute. It takes the least amount of time. It drives right by your favorite coffee shop. That's your favorite commute. And so you've developed a pattern. Now, say there's construction on that commute, and instead of taking half an hour, now it's taking 45 minutes. Mm-hmm. So you spacing out along you're spacing out going along your daily routine, you realize that construction's been going on for a few weeks, you really don't want to deal with it anymore. And subconsciously, without even really thinking about it, you take a left and take a new route. Now that route may be 10 minutes longer than your old route, but now it's 5 minutes shorter than the than the old route with construction.
Sure.
But you made that subconscious choice. You created your own new reality, and you did it by hypnotizing yourself, even if for a split second.
This is profound, especially from a business owner standpoint, and somebody who is an aspiring entrepreneur, or somebody who is owns a full-blown company. This is a really big deal, because this can elicit a huge mindset shift in their own daily routines.
Mm-hmm.
This is something we hear about all the time. I thought this and it came to be, or I started dreaming about that house and all of a sudden I'm living in that house now, or I wanted that car so bad and now that car's in my driveway. Are these the things that we're talking about here, where the subconscious mind is actively making decisions and allowing us to sort of navigate completely, for our conscious mind to be completely unaware of the effect? Is this what's going on here?
Absolutely. And this is a little different than law of attraction, which you may have heard, the secret, and what the bleep do we know. And that's actually a little separate thing, but not by much. What you're doing when you, as an entrepreneur or as a new business owner, when you start actively hypnotizing yourself for better goals, or to, say on a daily basis, to take away whatever's blocking you. When you tell your mind, I want to get rid of whatever's keeping me from achieving my goals, then your subconscious starts to make the changes it needs to make to to stop hindering you from achieving those goals. Like I said, it's like a little kid. And when you tell it what it needs to be doing, then it'll do it. But if you don't give it that, if you don't tell it to clean its room on a regular basis, for an example, then it's just going to wander around. It'll pick up a couple of toys and then wander off. But if you keep telling it, clean your room, clean your room, clean your room, then it'll start keeping its room clean, so to speak, and it'll get rid of the mindsets that keep you from moving forward. Plus, it'll also start creating the mindsets that will enhance. Rather than just getting rid of the ones that hinder, it'll start creating the ones that enhance. But that part is a daily visualization, and that's you can do that in one session and just keep supporting that change, or you can make it a daily affirmation.
Interesting. And so where do I start? I have these goals and I have these aspirations, and I'm sure everybody who's listening on this show is thinking like, all right, shit, I have all these goals and ideas and things that I want to do with my business, but where do I start? How do I start getting into that flow, into that visualization mindset that you mentioned? What's the first step?
First step is to figure out what you want your goals to be. Make them specific. Just saying, I want a better business doesn't quite cut it. How do you want a better business? How do you want to make your business better? In what ways do you want your business to be better? If you're just saying, I want more customers to come in, that's not really going to get anything. You've got to figure out what you can do to improve your mindset and your business that will bring in more customers, or bring in more clientele, bring in more business.
Sure.
Make your goals specific and write them down. Make them concrete, make them tangible, and then reaffirm them every day. One of the things you can do is, once you've figured out what your goals are, is to record them out onto an MP3 or even on a CD. 5 minutes of repeating what your goals are. And like I said, as specific as possible. 5 minutes of repetition of what your goals are. And as you're driving to work, put the CD in the player, put your iPod, or hook up your iPod to the radio, and start that playing, just repeating over and over and over and over, and just let it be in the background. That's how advertisements work on the radio. They're in the background. You're not really paying attention to them. You're waiting for the music, or waiting for the DJs to start talking again. Mm-hmm. But the advertisements in the background, they're hitting your subconscious because your conscious mind isn't focusing on them. So the repetition of those advertisements is hitting your subconscious and doing a little bit of hypnosis on their own. So if you change that, if you take away the radio and those advertisements and make that daily affirmation, make that daily repetition of your goals, that you're not going to focus on those your whole trip. You're going to be focusing on what you're driving, where you're driving, what you need to be doing for the day. But those going over and over and over in the background are going to stick into your mind, and you're going to program yourself. You're going to hypnotize yourself.
These things, they have to be in our control, or could they be out of our control, like winning the lottery? Because if I have the I guess the goal to win the lottery and then go retire in the Cayman Islands somewhere, I'm going to go spend all my money on the lottery and probably not retire because it's out of my control. Is that right? Do these things have to be somewhat within our grasp already?
On that aspect, yes. On creating and setting new goals for that need to be realistic. They need to be conscious. For the winning the lottery and getting into the law of attraction, the secret, and what the bleep do we know. And I actually consider both of those, both the secret and what the bleep do we know, as the same thing, just different sides of the coin.
Okay.
With those, that's actually a little bit different. With that, that's that's actually kind of a metaphysical thing of putting the intention out into the universe, putting that vibe out into the universe. And the problem with that is with a lot of people, and one of the guys in What the Bleep Do We Know actually put this wonderfully. He's a Catholic priest. That they interviewed. He said most people have a thin smear of positive thinking over an entire ocean of negative thinking, and that sabotages yourself. When you're saying, I want to win the lottery, you've got part of yourself saying, I want to win the lotto, I want to win the lotto, I need to win the lotto, I want to win the lotto. On the other side, you've got old subconscious old subconscious patterns that say, well, I'm not worthy. Nobody wins the lotto. If I win the lotto, it'll change me for the worse. So here you've got two competing intentions you're sending out into the universe, and they're going to negate each other, and you're not going to end up winning the lotto. And the longer it goes on of not winning the lotto, the more the negative is reinforced, and it's even less likely that's going to happen.
Got it. So that's all about mindset shift and identifying those areas that you start siphoning that ocean of negativity and putting it into that mountain of positivity. You've got to shift that methodology and that way of thinking that's no longer serving you, and it does wonders for I imagine it will do wonders for your business, your personal life, and everything around you. And
Absolutely.
What's one of your experiences with this?
Actually, quite honestly, getting into a speaking career. I saw every day when I get up in the morning, I see myself being up on stage in front of people, and not as though I'm in the audience looking at myself on stage. I visualize myself on stage looking in front of a huge crowd and making that real. For just a couple minutes every day, I make that real for me. And as soon as I really truly felt that down in here reality, I started getting bookings. I started getting leads. I started getting interest. I set my goals. I made myself set goals that were realistic first. A book I've got coming out pretty soon, I set myself every day for a certain amount of time every day. I wrote on the book. I wrote another chapter, or I wrote another 1,000 words. I made my goals realistic. I made them tangible, and I worked my way through it. And all of a sudden, the book is done. Same thing with speaking. I set out my goals every day of making cold calls, of making 40 cold calls a day. Now I get rejected 39 times out of every 40. That's kind of the problem with cold calls. But it's not the only advertising I do. I work a network. Hey, do you know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who might be looking for a speaker?
Sure.
But once I started really seeing myself in front of a crowd and with a specific message that I wanted to get across, not just I want to get up in front of a crowd and talk, but I want to get this specific message to people. Once I had that in my head, in my heart, and just throughout my entire being, things started to happen.
So it's all about how you perceive what you want your reality to be. and you've shifted your focus and actually started attaining. Congratulations! It's a really big accomplishment. Writing a book is no easy feat. I know there's many people who've been on the show who've written books, and it is very cumbersome. I've yet to write my book, and it is I am loathing that day that I have to sit down and write to that extent. It's a lot of work. So congratulations on getting that done. That's a huge step. And getting in front of an audience, actually visualizing that, now it's happening for you. You're doing it. You're a full-time speaker, and this is something that you've been working towards. That's really remarkable, Dylan. I can't even imagine what kind of a life shift would have to occur for those people who are in the 9 to 5 and kind of the grind and doing the whole routine, for them to snap out of it and get into a different mindset and get into a different way of thinking. And I think hypnosis is definitely one of those key areas that we often overlook. There's just a lot of noise out there on the web, and nobody's really talking about, well, hey, you can actually induce these states, and it's I don't know, is it similar to like meditation, or is it similar to like what a Buddhist monk would get into, that theta brainwave state?
It's slightly different. It's very close to, but it's just slightly different from a meditative state. It's basically the difference between driving a sedan and a Ford sedan to a Chevy sedan. It's slightly different, but still the same. With the intention is different.
Okay.
With meditation, you're looking to clear your mind. You're looking to focus. You're trying to create a state where you're not letting your train of thought take you off into wherever it likes to go. That's actually why most people end up starting meditation and letting it go, because they think they have to completely clear their minds of everything and stay with it, and they end up after 2 or 3 days, well, I can't do this, and so they give it up. They think that they've got to stay with that they can automatically do it, and what happens is they still get caught up by the train of thought, and they come in and out of a meditative state. And once you've learned that skill, you stay in the meditative state. Now with hypnosis, you're a little bit deeper, because you're out of the realm of meditative and down into the subconscious. You can even look at it as, up here, I'm going to make sure I'm getting this, up here is your conscious mind, meditative state, just before sleep, that place between sleep and awake where you can still remember your dreams, but you're getting up, and then your subconscious. And it's just basically a different level, and you get to those different levels in different ways.
I'll be frank. I'm trying to get more sales for my business. I'm a business owner. My goal is to drive more traffic, get more sales, get more conversions. Why do I need hypnosis to do that if I know the cognitive steps? And I know this is going to be a huge objection for every business owner who's listening to this. They're going to say, well, I already have my processes in place. Why do I need hypnosis to do this?
First, let me ask you this. What's keeping you from doing more every day to find more business?
Well,
noticed that you mentioned earlier distractions. You even used the words, it's really hard to write a book, or it's really hard to get into doing that. You said you weren't looking forward to writing your book. Why? That's what you got to ask yourself. Why are you holding yourself back? What mental patterns have you got that's keeping you from moving forward?
I see.
And that's where hypnosis comes in. You can get rid of the conscious babble, that train of thought, and talk directly to your subconscious and to the different parts of your personality, the different little sub-egos that you have in your subconscious, and find out which ones are keeping you from moving forward.
I see.
A lot of people have what's called the fear of success. They don't want to succeed because subconsciously they don't want to succeed because they're afraid it'll change them. They're afraid of what it'll mean. They're afraid of what happens if I have more money? Will I become different? What happens if I move up in the company? I'll have more responsibilities. What happens if I make so many sales that I can't handle the workload? These are all things that people have in their subconscious that actually almost physically sometimes keep them from achieving more. because of these little insecurities. And with hypnosis, you can go down, you can talk to those little egos. You can say, look, I promise, if I become more successful, we're not going to turn into somebody who's egotistical and obnoxious like we see in the movies. If we become more successful, if we get more workload, then we'll find ways to handle it. And with hypnosis, you contact those little egos directly, those little personalities directly that are keeping you from moving forward, and help them to understand it so you can move forward.
It's almost like you have all these competing little people inside of your own brain telling you all these different things. I don't know if you've seen that movie Inside Out, but it sounds like that's almost what's going on, and it's truly what's going on inside of our own brains, inside of our own bodies.
Mm-hmm. That's actually a great example, and in fact, to use that example, rather than just 5 little emotions, if you've seen the movie, then you've seen all those little memory balls that are floating around, and there's hundreds of thousands of them on the racks. Rather than just those little 5 emotions, imagine that every single one of those memory balls is another little subpersonality, another little ego. They all want a chance at that control panel, and they're all created by your subconscious to handle a specific situation, to handle a specific skill, a problem that you've had to solve at some point.
Okay.
And they weren't developed to handle that problem in the best way. They were just developed to handle that problem in the fastest way.
Okay.
So, say the first time you were ever chewed out by a boss, he's sitting there ranting and raving at how much you've screwed up, and you've never been in that situation before. Well, your subconscious will create a subpersonality to handle that, not handle it well, but over quick, being in an anxiety state. It really doesn't. In animals, the fight or flight state is instantaneous. It lasts for a split second, and then they've either fought or they're gone, or they've run. In humans, we hold on to that state. That's where a lot of stress comes from. We get that fight or flight state, and it just doesn't go away because we consciously regurgitate that stressful situation. But your subconscious wants to get rid of that fight or flight state as fast as it can.
Mm-hmm.
So what it'll do is it'll create a subpersonality to handle that moment. My boss is yelling at me, what am I going to do? Well, you may either just sit there and take it. You may talk back to the boss. Not always a good choice, but or try and explain yourself in a meek way. It just depends on what your past experiences have kind of led you to. But once your subconscious makes a decision, it creates that subpersonality. And so now that subpersonality is there and can handle that, has a response for when the next time you get chewed out by a boss. Now you've got a subpersonality that can come up and say, okay, this is what we're going to do to handle this situation. Mm-hmm. The problem is like I said, it's not always the best solution. And that, going back, that's a subconscious change that you've made. That's a subconscious, you've hypnotized yourself subconsciously to create that little subpersonality, that little ego. Now, if you want to make a conscious choosing or a conscious personality, if using the same scenario, say before your boss chewed you out, you had taken a conflict management course. Now you've got subpersonalities, you've learned those skills, and you've created subpersonalities that are healthy rather than just fast. So now you've got a personality, a little subpersonality that can handle being chewed out by your boss in a healthy way rather than just a fast way. You've created a conscious choice, a conscious skill, a conscious mindset. And every time you consciously create a mindset, you're doing that. You're creating a new subpersonality that can handle the situation well rather than just fast.
From what I'm understanding, hypnosis is a vehicle to get you there efficiently, quickly, and without any of the BS.
Absolutely. That's actually a great way to put it.
Very good. That's super exciting to hear, because hope is not lost. There is still an opportunity for all business owners and anybody who's really interested in doing something for themselves to actually do it, even though they've tried and failed a million times. And what happens when you encounter failure and you're going through these motions? Are your reactions then different?
Absolutely. When you encounter failure, it's a teaching tool that everybody has to deal with. But the problem is a lot of people, when they fail at something, it becomes a negative reinforcement. And they think, well, I failed once, so I'm going to end up failing again, and then I'll end up failing again, and I'll end up failing again.
So what's the point, right?
Right. Rather than taking that failure as a learning opportunity. Okay, I failed. I failed at something. Why did I fail? What can I change for the next time? What pattern do I, either mental pattern, action pattern, what do I need to change so that the next time I don't fail? And that's where a lot of people run into the problem. They fail and it becomes the negative reinforcement rather than the learning tool.
Sure. Yeah, that's a really important point, to reflect on those failures, to improve on them. That's what's really been pushing my business forward. And I'm sure with most business owners, eventually they come to a point, either they got really lucky in the beginning or something very interesting happened, whatever it is, the circumstances that allowed them to start their own business or their own venture. At that moment it was great, but then they encounter walls, they encounter hurdles that they need to cross. And that's really the whole journey. I mean, that's really the whole point, is not really considering them failures. They're all opportunities to get better, to make a better person out of yourself, to increase your own potential, both physical and mentally. So you can get to that next level without having to sacrifice your own self-pity or self-worth. So you feel actually accomplished when you get there, regardless if you how many times you had to drop that ball. I think I remember Michael Jordan. Well, a quote from Michael Jordan, that he failed so many times and he missed so many, thousands and thousands of baskets he missed and hundreds of games that he failed at before he actually became an NBA star. And he just kept going at it because that was his dream. That's what he wanted, and he made it. I mean, he's the number one. He's for all intents and purposes, the number one basketball player of history. Now, I know you have this concept of 10%, and this isn't the 10% of the wealthy people in the world. This is the 10% myth of brain power.
Lois McMaster-Bujold, one of my favorite fantasy authors, said through one of her characters that most people just show up for the job of life. They're surviving day to day. They're not, they're just going through the motions just to get through the day. And where this comes in is the myth is that the myth was that people only use 10% of their brains, and then that sparked a whole bunch of neurological studies saying no, the whole brain is being used. There's neurons firing everywhere. There's neurons that go back and forth and here and there, and they all fire at the same time. That's not the myth. The myth is that you're only using 10% of the mental capacity that you can use. And going through the day-to-day drudgery, just showing up for life, you're only using 10% of your mental capacity. Now, when everybody lumps up above that 10% on a regular basis or on a daily basis, but in short bursts, going back to the visionaries, they're the ones that go above that 10%. They use more than 10% of their mental abilities to make life reality, or to better themselves. Every time you learn a new skill, when it's the first time you've learned it, and it's hard, but you're pushing through, you're using more than 10% of your brain power. You're bumping up above that 10%. Every time you encounter something new and figure out a way around it, every time you have an innovative thought, you're bumping up above that 10%. You're topping that 10% capability. Rather than just driving down a road at 40 miles an hour, you're speeding up above that 40 miles an hour and actually getting some power out of your car. That's topping 10%. It's when you choose to use more, when you choose to go above and beyond just the daily grind, the daily drudge, when you choose to move yourself above that, then you're topping that 10%. You're using more than 10% of your brain's capability. And a lot of people don't, because it takes effort.
So if we imagine our brain almost like their computer processor, when it's only at 10% running capacity, it's got that other 90% to compute. So it's not necessarily that we're not using our brain 10%. We're only using 10% of our brain, but the 10% of the computing capacity of our brain at any given time.
Right, and most people go throughout their day on screensaver. They don't even bring up Word or Excel or anything like that. They barely even pull up their email. Most of the day they're just on screensaver, going through the same routine over and over and over, because they're just looking to survive till tomorrow. But there is all that other 90%, like you said, of computing capability. It doesn't matter what processor's in there, because different people have different size processors. But if you're not going to use the other 90% of that processing capability, then you're just using that 10%.
It's really hard to imagine going back to that state of mind, as I look at people that I used to know, or some people that I was friends with at one point, and it's like they've never even changed. And when I go back into that mindset, when I go back and visit them or hang out with them, it's like I can't even relate. It's ludicrous to think that they're still doing that, activity at 10%, and here I am at, basically every single day at 90 or 95% of the capacity that I can muster. It's just, there's no going back. So that's the shift, and that's, I think, is a really key point that you brought up, Dylan. It's once you get to that shift, whether it's hypnosis or whether it's anything else, once you shift your mindset and once you get to that point beyond realizing that, oh, I suck, and oh, I can't do that, I'm not good enough, and that's not going to work, and man, why did you think of that stupid idea? Once we get past that sort of bantering, we can take our brains and our lives to the next level. And you can't go back to that former state, because you look at yourself and you're like, man, that sucked. Why would I ever want to do that? It's remarkable when you have that shift. And I think, it's at everybody's life, at different points in everybody's life, it's going to happen at different times and different areas. And again, I really think hypnosis is such a cool example, because you can access, though, even if you're not in that state of mind all the time. As an entrepreneur, you and I both know your mind's always dipping into that, 90% realm. As somebody who's not really doing that on a daily basis, and they're only doing the 10%, the mundane tasks, the hypnotic state can dip them into these states of mind that give them a little taste of what it's like to be in that successful position, or to own a successful company, or to have whatever it is that their goals and aspirations are. And that's what I really, really appreciate about hypnosis, is that you can actually elicit these emotions and these states of mind from people without them ever experiencing otherwise, and have them experience it right then and there. When somebody sees that, Dylan, what is that like? What is that aha moment for them, or even for you?
Oh, it's different for everybody, because everybody's grown up with different experiences, but it feels different for everybody. But it is actually a physical feeling, as you know, and most of your listeners know. It is, when you have that aha moment, it's your body feels lighter, or it may feel vibrational, or you may feel it down in the pit of your stomach. It's different for everybody.
Sure.
But it's also very intense and fleeting. Unfortunately, it's a hard emotion to keep, because then you're moving on, and it's just the way we're wired. But if you can feel that feeling often, it becomes almost like a drug. It's fantastic. You want more of it, and you create situations to create more of it. Unfortunately, with a lot of people, they have those aha moments here and there, maybe once a week, once a month. Some people only experience it once a year. And unfortunately, then they also have the rest of the time is the same old every day, or worse. And then they jump up to that aha moment and back down again. And with hypnosis or with conscious behavior control, you can have more of those aha moments. Another great way to do it is to find every day, or every chance you get, find a way to learn something new. Find a way to learn a new skill, learn new information, A lot of the YouTube videos I tend to watch are things like Veritasium, Smarter Every Day, the ones that teach you something new every day. You learn how to do something new every time. The DIY videos. Every time I watch a new one, I learn something new. I get to expand my knowledge base, and I have that aha moment. Learning a new skill or learning new information is a fantastic way to have those aha moments, not just for me, but for everybody. When you learn that new skill and you have that achievement, that feeling of, I just did this, that's an aha moment. For new business owners or for small business owners, every time they figure out a new way to create something innovative, I just did that. That's an achievement. I just got 50 more customers walking in my door in the last week. That's an achievement. That's a great feeling. And so when you do things to create more of those feelings, or create that feeling more often, it becomes addictive.
The more times you'll experience it, the higher the frequency those will actually occur, because you're craving those. Your subconscious mind is actually seeking those experiences out. It's amazing. We're getting close to time here. I want to thank you again for being on the show. It has been an absolute pleasure to have your insight and have the information that you've provided for everybody. It really is remarkable to think that with a couple steps and minor changes throughout your day-to-day, you can have profound impacts on your life. And that is just, to me, that has been absolutely life-changing, and something that I will definitely be, a lot of these things that we discussed today, going to be implementing on a daily basis for those things that I haven't implemented yet. Dylan, do you have anything that you want to close with, or anything that you want to mention before we kind of get out of this mindset zone and we get back into our own realities?
Making a change is easy. What's hard for everybody is the decision to change. Consciously making that decision that I want to be better. I want to break out of the mold. I want to break out of my daily grind. That's where most people trip up. That's where it's the hardest for most people, is making that decision to change. But once you've made that decision to change, and you say to yourself on every level, I want to be different. I want to be better. The rest is easy. The rest is just process.
So you got to get into that mindset. You got to get into that routine. Dylan, where can we find more information about you? If somebody's interested in booking an appointment with you, either for a session or for a actual speaking engagement, where can we find you?
For a speaking engagement, you can actually find me at justmyname.com. So www.dylancounts.com. That'll bring up my speaking site. You can find what different programs I have, what they're about, and how to contact me. If you want just a hypnotic session to stop smoking or to create better habits, you can find me at Westminster Hypnosis. Just Google Westminster Hypnosis or westminsterhypnosis.com. I'm right here in Westminster, Colorado.
And if you're interested in finding more about this podcast, you can visit wpsoar.com. Well, of course, we'll provide all the links and contact information for Dylan on our podcast page. So visit wpsoar.com, click on the podcast, and you'll see Dylan Counts' interview here. And please comment below on this podcast, either on the YouTube video, or you can comment directly on the website at wpsoar.com. Dylan, once again, thank you so much for this enlightening session. I almost feel like I went through a hypnotic state, and my whole mindset is transformed after today. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope we can see you again soon.